All right, well, we'll get started now. First of all, thank you for choosing this workshop, and I hope that we're going to have some interesting and stimulating discussion for you. To make sure everyone's in the right place, this is the workshop on bridging gaps in the supply of pro bono services and community needs. I am the moderator of this panel. My name is Alan Schiffman. I'm a partner with a large international law firm called Skadden, and I am based in Hong Kong. And I head our pro bono efforts in Hong Kong and in Asia. Many of the things that we're going to talk about today are things that affect my firm as well, and that I'm eager to hear about and to hear if we can come up with some solutions. Today's topic on bridging the gaps, we're going to talk about the challenges and the dynamics between local firms and foreign firms, the dynamics between the law firms themselves and the NGOs, and we're going to hear about things from both the law firm and the NGO perspective. We have four really terrific panelists. I will introduce them, and I'll introduce each individually and let them say just a minute or two who they are, what organization they work with, and your role within that organization. So to my left first is Algif Aksa.
Hello, my name is Al Ghifari. I'm director of Jakarta Legal Aid Institute, or LBH Jakarta. This organization was established in 1971, and then we give legal services to poor and oppressed people, and not only legal service, but we also give legal empowerment, research, and policy advocacy. We call our work as a structural legal aid. It's more or beyond the conservative or conventional legal aid.
Okay, thanks. And next to the left is Rebecca Greenhouse.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Greenhouse. I'm a senior associate in the pro bono team at Ashurst. We are a commercial firm with 2,000 lawyers around the world. We've got 25 offices in 16 different countries. And as our team has started saying, we're actually the largest global practice in the firm because we have a global pro bono practice of 2,000 lawyers.
Next is Gianna Lin.
Hello everyone, my name is Sheila Lin. I'm from Legal Center for NGO. Basically, we are an NGO who providing legal services to other NGOs. We have three pillars of our services. One is academic research on not-for-profit law. The second one is community service. And the third one is the clearinghouse. Thank you.
Okay. And last is Nani Sulmanarni.
Hi, my name is Nani. I'm the director of PACA, the Women-Headed Family Empowerment Organization. This is women's rights organization. We are organizing poorest, widows, divorced, single women in mostly rural areas in 20 provinces of Indonesia. One of the program is focused on access to justice, where we do our legal empowerment, train the grassroots women to become paralegals and try to have their justice.
Okay, great. Before we dive into the discussion today, I just want people to know that we have until about 5:25 p.m. because of the little bit of a late start. So if you're looking at your watches and wondering why we haven't finished yet, it's because we got an extension. So today's headline topic, as I mentioned, is bridging the gaps. And I think one of the things we've heard from several of the panels today and in the sessions is that the pro bono culture in places like the US and in England and in Australia, it's very different than it is in many countries in Asia, probably because the culture itself goes back for many, many more years for doing pro bono work. In those places, we don't have all the same gaps that we're going to be talking about today, though interestingly, there are definitely some gaps that we have and that we share. What we'll hear about today are things like language gaps, important gaps between providing pro bono services on an urban and rural basis, and also hearing about the challenges that NGOs have with finding the right pro bono lawyers for them. Where there are gaps in places like the US and Australia and England, very often the answers to those are more readily apparent. For example, in many countries in Asia, foreign firms cannot practice local law or don't have knowledge of the relevant law that are seen in pro bono cases. And in fact, the local lawyers often don't have the experience in dealing with the kinds of issues that the NGO clients or other pro bono clients need. And we'll hear from our panelists today on some of the issues associated with that. So turning now to the panelists, I'd like to ask them, we'll hear from them on, for their organizations, what are the biggest challenges you see in getting pro bono services, providing pro bono services for your constituent groups, for your members, for your NGO itself? And let's start with Algif.
Yeah, my organization, Jakarta Legal Aid Institute, we receive around 1,300 cases per year. And then, because we only have 21 lawyers and 18 assistant to public interest lawyers, and we work, we have different type of work. We call it structural legal aid. We don't handle all of the case, even for the poor person. And we give all, to all of complainants or justice seekers legal advice, but we cannot bring or brought it to the next level of legal service. We found many difficulties to refer the case or to handle the case, not only the number of lawyers, but also the misconception of pro bono, I think. Because when we ask profit lawyers to do pro bono, there are some misconception, I think. And for example, many lawyers only think about litigation when we talk about pro bono. The same thing that also rise after lunch session. And then some lawyers also think that pro bono can be changed by establishing legal aid organization. So some law firm or some lawyers also have foundation to do legal aid. That I think pro bono is individual and it's part of our profession as lawyers, as individual, and also can be changed by donating some fund to legal aid organization. We found that thing as well, and we found that huge gap between the real implementation of law. Between the real implementation of law and also the legal education. So many gaps or very huge gap between legal education and then the implementation of law, and especially for access to justice that more related to social change and etc.
Okay, thank you. Nani, you're also in Indonesia, and so I would assume that you face a lot of the very same challenges. You're also on the demand side of the pro bono services, and you work a lot in remote areas, and this in particular is a big challenge for you and your organization. If you could tell our audience about that.
Yes, for our organization, at least there are 3 challenges that we face in terms helping from lawyers on our legal cases. First, of course, availability of lawyers around our working area. Most of our area in rural and remote area, and there are almost no law firm nearby which we can easily access, and also communication is not good either. And the second, the issues that we face is mostly the social issues related with our rights to women's rights, like the domestic violence, trafficking, and all rights to access to different government services and access to legal identity, for example. So all these kind of issues is not really understood very well by maybe by private lawyers. And the third is the perception of the people as well. So we do a lot of legal empowerment by educate people to use legal framework to deal with their cases. But most of our rural area, most of the women that we are working with, is more convenient to bring their case to an informal process rather than bring it to the legal process. So I think this really the three things that we consider as the gap between the provider of the legal assistance and we as the demand side of the legal assistance from lawyers.
Okay, thank you. And Gianna, you're, I would say, sort of the opposite of Nanny's position in that you're far from a rural area. You're in one of the largest metropolitan areas in the world, in Shanghai. And you're also kind of not really on the demand side. You're more in the middle. You're trying to bring the lawyers to the NGOs or vice versa, but you also have challenges, different kinds of challenges. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, actually, I want to say it is really difficult to in a middle position. So generally, I want to talk about the challenges from two sides. On one side is from the demand side. The NGOs, because our main clients are the small or newly established NGOs, those NGOs' demand sometimes could not be very clearly addressed by the donors or sometimes the government, because the donors or the government who give the money, they have their own demand or the list of projects they want to purchase from the local legal resources. But sometimes the demands of the NGOs are not correctly addressed. So this is from one side, and from the other side is sometimes the NGOs, and also including us, supporting NGO, we find it is difficult to allocate an appropriate lawyer who equipped with sufficient knowledge to help those NGOs. For example, our lawyer volunteers are mostly commercial lawyers or corporate lawyers. So, but our NGO clients are, for example, Save Children organizations or women rights fighting organizations. So it is sometimes difficult to allocate a lawyer has this knowledge in those specific areas. So this is two sides of challenges. So as an NGO or an organization in the middle of the demand side and the supply side, as for the first point, we try to cooperate with the donors or the government or the organizations who purchase the services to create their demand list. So we will try to influence them from the very beginning. So let them know the demand of the NGOs and what their legal requests are and what their legal risks are, and we will show them the real cases we've handled. So we will try to make the demand list be realistic and more close to the real demand of the NGOs. This is one on the one hand, and on the other hand, we train the lawyers. We provide the trainings to lawyers on those areas which are specifically required by those NGOs. So this is what I want to say.
Okay, and so Rebecca, we've heard that there are misunderstandings or misconceptions about what pro bono is. We've heard that one of the key issues is lawyers not having the correct expertise, the substantive knowledge of the areas that they would need to work on, and Asher's handles mostly commercial and litigation and the kind of things that my firm handles as well. We have the issue of rural areas. Are these all things that you face in your pro bono practice, or these are not issues in your pro bono practice, or you have found ways to deal with these issues in Asher's pro bono practice?
Yeah, so I think each country really varies. We've got an Australian practice which they have a wonderful series of rural programs. They're able to go out to various parts of Australia to give pro bono services. They've got all sorts of specialist services that they've developed over many, many years. So Australia is really doing quite well. And then you come to the UK, and the UK at the moment is in a little bit of a state of flux because they've cut lots of legal aid. So suddenly we have advice deserts in the UK where people cannot get advice at an affordable price, and they can't afford to travel to the people who can give them that advice. The legal advice centres have closed because there isn't enough money, so these deserts are getting larger. And the same issue arises for the topics of law that we're now being asked to advise on. Suddenly, people want help with family law, with employment law, because legal aid isn't available for that. So we've had to really start, in the UK and in other countries, start trying to come up with new ways to address how do we get to parts of the UK that we don't normally work in? How do we train our lawyers so that they can assist in new areas of law?
So is the answer here training, and can the training, do you think, be adapted in all these in these other countries? I mean, I think we kind of realize that there's probably no one-size-fits-all answer to this.
Yeah, I think what we've done in the UK is hopefully going to work in the UK, but I don't think we can just take that and apply it to every country that we have an office. I think every single country that we operate in, we need to understand what the local issues are, what the local needs are. And it might be that sometimes you think, hey, we did something in Australia, maybe it will work here. We did something in the UK, maybe it will work here. But you first need to understand what the local needs are, and maybe none of those ideas will work. I see David nodding, and actually, I was going to bring in an example here. A few years ago in London, we had the PILNet European Conference, and an American lawyer journalist was on a session, and he was very insistent that all the rest of the world should be doing the same amount of pro bono as America, and really, you just need to do what we're doing. It's very simple. You should just be copying this. And somebody mentioned Australia had some good ideas, and he was quite dismissive and said, I mean, Australia have what, 5 law firms? What do they know about pro bono? And John Corker, I'm sure you all know John. John was very helpful in correcting his misconceptions. But it was a really good example that you can't just assume what we do here will work in the next country, and the next country. You have to talk to the people in your local office. You have to talk to the local community to understand what will work, what won't work, and what you have to try again.
Thanks. In some of the other panels, they talked about things like collaboration between the international law firms and the local law firms, and whether that can work, whether that's helpful. I talked with our panelists earlier today about whether they tend to work more with foreign lawyers or with local lawyers, or frankly with any lawyers at all, and I got very different answers from the different panelists. So Gianni, for example, you told me that it's a 50-50 split, but it's not quite so simple as saying, well, it's 50% foreign lawyers and 50% local lawyers. In fact, that's not the way to describe it, right? Why don't you tell us about the mix of lawyers who provide pro bono services to your NGO clients?
Okay, when I say 50-50, I do not say the 50-50 foreign law firms or 50-50 local law firms, but lawyers from foreign law firms or lawyers from local law firms. So I noticed in China, the thing is some very large foreign law firm who have a very good culture to in pro bono services, who are willing to help, but sometimes they will need the projects. So they can't see the projects. So this is one of the gap. And for the local law firms, they do not have a very good culture of a pro bono. So the lawyer, the law firm itself cannot compare their lawyers to do pro bono works. So this is on the other side. So for us, the difficulty is how to encourage the lawyers from local law firm to the pro bono works, and how to introduce our pro bono system and our projects to large foreign law firms. This is the other challenge for me. So as I just talked to a part of the biggest law firm in China, so about his opinion, how to create cultures, pro bono cultures in large local law firms, and whether we should start from the very high level, for example, change the management scheme, or we should start from the very low end. We just let several local lawyers to do the pro bono work first and make influence on that local law firm. So I just figure out we need to do things like on two hands. For example, on one hand, we still need to try to change the management scheme, but we have to do it very slowly. But from the very low level, now we are doing many work on young lawyers. So we have used legal camp. We have do it for 2 years, and we will try to train those young lawyers to become not-for-profit law experts. So sometimes they have passion, they have knowledge, they're willing to learn, and they also keen to have influence on their law firms they work with. So we anticipate, like after 2 years or 3 years, their work, their effort will change the culture of our local law firms.
You'd mentioned to me that that if a Chinese admitted lawyer goes to work for a foreign law firm, the lawyer has to give up the practicing certificate. So the lawyer cannot practice local law. So how does the foreign law firm assist in any pro bono matters when they have no one who can actually practice local law?
Legally speaking, this is quite like a legal gaps in China, because as foreign law firms, basically they could not provide any, they can't practice a PRC law, because if one is qualified here in China as a Chinese lawyer, their lawyer's license has to be suspended when they join a foreign law firm, in which case they can't practice PRC law. So this is an issue, because if they try to involve in any litigation or any legal matters, this is basically illegal. So this is sort of legal risks for them. But for local law firms, they do not have this kind of issue, but because they are basically Chinese practicing lawyers. So what's our job as a supporting NGO? We will try to make those lawyers from foreign law firm act as volunteers of our organization. So in which case they can provide services to those who need.
Okay, that's a helpful way to deal with that issue. Nanny, when I asked the question before about the mix of local lawyers or local law firms and foreign law firms or foreign lawyers, and what percentage of each do you work with, I got a very surprising and very different kind of answer to that. Why don't you tell about where you get your legal services?
Yeah, I think to work directly with the community, I think the local law firm is much more suitable, because they have to understand, they are the one who understand the culture of the law implementation in particular area of Indonesia. But I think what the international law firm can contribute in this process is, as you said before, that maybe how to build perception and pro bono culture, and also approach and methodology to reach out to the community, because, and also to build critical understanding and awareness from the community themselves, that the role of lawyer is not always for something that profit oriented. So I think this one can contribute. So if I'm not coming from the lawyers community, and neither from the legal community itself, but as from our point of view, I think exchange in terms of practice, and also exchange in terms of tools, how to reach out to the community is really important in this kind of cooperation, if we would like to to develop the cooperation between international and national, or maybe even like from national level to local level in Indonesia. Is also there are huge gap. For example, lawyers in Jakarta or in a big city with lawyers in district level also have huge gap in terms of maybe tools or perception, the way they work with the community.
Also, you had mentioned before that that your organization doesn't really work with law firms, right? You get
Yes.
your legal services from other kinds of organizations.
Yes, we have been working on these legal issues for more than 10 years, and for that long we never work with law firm. So mostly we get assistance from legal aid organization, especially legal aid for women's rights. And in the case when we don't have legal aid organization nearby, like in district level where we work, we try to reach out to university who provide like community services, community legal services. Then we, because of in fact, the community really need legal advice, especially. Then we try to train our community leaders to become paralegal instead. So the legal aid organization or the university helping us develop module and also helping us train the community to become paralegal. So in case that they cannot come, at least the community who become paralegal can give some light legal advice to the community who seeks for advice on the legal case. But in the case of very difficult issues like murder, trafficking, or domestic violence, where we need to bring the case to the court, then we try to build communication with the legal aid organization who then can provide us with pro bono lawyers.
Do you think this is because you're in such rural and remote areas that you can't find the lawyers to handle the work, or that the lawyers are unfamiliar with the subject matter and that's why they don't want to take on the work?
It's both. It's both. We try in several areas to talk to the lawyers when we have some cases like the trafficking cases that we face in West Kalimantan, in NTT. Then most of the lawyers nearby that we can reach out, like in the district level where we work, they said they are not really working on that case. So we thought our lawyers can handle this kind of case, but they said they're not, and then they refer us to others, to like their colleagues or other, and they always refer us to maybe you can go get help from legal aid organization. So that's why, and also from our, then after that we also think that lawyers is expensive, so that's why then we don't try, or didn't really like building communication with the law firm in other places. So we already have that kind of psychological block. So if we go there then, and we have to pay money and we don't have money for that. So I think this is also one factor why then after 10 years we never really get in touch with law firm.
So we'll come back shortly to the question of lawyers are expensive and why does that prevent pro bono work, because when I first heard that I thought that's sort of strange because the pro bono work is provided for free, but that's another gap that needs to be bridged. Before we get to that though, Algif, you've worked with both local and international law firms, right? Why don't you tell us about how you get your legal services?
Yeah, we have some collaboration with local law firm and also international law firm. For example, we had a number of trainings invited one senior lawyers from American Bar Association from California, and then we also had one lawyer from United States that helped us to support refugee and to advocate refugee rights and doing refugee status determination. And we also had some collaboration with Indonesian Bar Association before. We have referral case system with Indonesian Bar Association, and then we also have memorandum of understanding with Alan and Overy Indonesia or Ginting and Rekso Dipuro, but we had some problem. I think we also have a miscommunication because, as I understand, as my colleagues understand that they said that they cannot handle criminal case anymore because they don't know how to handle a criminal case. But on the other side, they said that LBH Jakarta or my organization is not sending case anymore. But we just met the Ginting and Reksodipuro or Alan and Aubrey Indonesia to renew the memorandum of understanding. And a couple weeks ago, we met alumni organization of Faculty of Law, University of Indonesia, and also from Pradi or Indonesian Bar Association, and we will have some collaboration with them all, with referral case or pro bono clearing house as well, and then we also have some litigation or some handling a case together. For example, like defamation case or criminalization against leader of NGO, and then also anti-corruption advocacy. Last month we got more than 150 lawyers from Indonesian Bar Association and law firm commit to defend Haris Azhar, the coordinator of Kontras. Kontras is the champion of human rights NGO in Indonesia, and reported by police and also military institution and then National Narcotics Agency because of defamation, because of his status to open the narcotics mafia. And then the lawyers very solid to support Haris Azhar. I think there is a strong energy to do pro bono right now in Indonesia, and there is a problem that Pradi Indonesian Bar Association split into three, but also another bar association, IKADIN, KAI, and etc. But I think we can take the positive meaning that in each organization or in each bar they have a pro bono division, and then we push them to do pro bono in its bar association.
So when you get lawyers through the bar association, through the Jakarta Bar Association, is that because they have some roster, some list of lawyers who who have signed up or have raised their hand and said yes, they want to do pro bono? How do they decide which lawyers to go to for example, when you reach out to the Jakarta Bar Association?
Many times we know the lawyers, and we know the integrity and the skill of the lawyers. So mostly they are our alumni, part of a legal aid organization, and then we ask them to do pro bono or to help our advocacy. But for the referral case, it depends on the Indonesian Bar Association. We just send them chronology or the position of the case, and then they will decide who will handle the case. And we don't know who handle the case. And
Rebecca, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this issue or on the notion of collaboration between local and foreign firms. I know that your firm has an affiliation with a firm in Indonesia, for example, so that allows Ashurst to do collaboration. I know for our firm, well, we don't have any affiliate in Indonesia, and I think globally our pro bono program is such that we tend not to work with local law firms. We tend to do the work on our own, and not in some kind of partnership with a local law firm or one that we're not affiliated with.
Yeah, we do a few different types of approach for this. I think where we aren't in country, we will still look to see if there's a way for us to perhaps support lawyers if they need that extra support, or if we're doing a piece of work and we need expertise from a particular country, we can ask the local firms from that country, can they share their expertise to help the pro bono client? Where we do have an office locally, and so, for example, Jakarta, we're able to do some local work. Sometimes we may have foreign lawyers who can't practice and local lawyers who can. So the foreign lawyers are able to support the local lawyers and give them extra capacity to do the work. But we always are looking to try and collaborate, and that is one of the things we've done in the UK to start trying to address these challenges, is how can we as firms together share information, share opportunities, because the primary aim is to make sure that the clients get the help they need.
We talked a little bit before about training, and training can be a very effective tool, and training can take on many different forms. There's the notion of training people in the substantive area, and we've heard that that very often, for example, the local lawyers may not be knowledgeable about the kinds of laws that are impacted or that are affected by the kinds of constituents that the NGOs work with, things like poverty laws, employment laws, women's rights laws, so there could be training on that. There's also the notion of training up students or non-lawyers to be able to help, and also training on just the very nature of pro bono and why do firms do pro bono and how do they organize their pro bono programs. Turning to Rebecca first, what's your thought on training, and what are some of the training things that you've done, particularly in connection with developing markets?
Sure, and it's probably a mixture of things we've done and things we're now doing based on what we're learning elsewhere. There's two types of training really that we're involved with. One is training in the countries where we have an office, and training in countries where we don't. So taking Indonesia as an example, because we're here, if we have expertise in certain areas of law and we're going to try and train our own lawyers, then our Jakarta office can invite other local firms who want to help in that area of law to come to the training. We can share our training with them. So instead of every firm having to arrange separate sessions, everybody can benefit from one. If we don't have the expertise as a global firm, and I know we'll talk about this again, but we sometimes have resource, we're able to commission training, we're able to bring an NGO or bring a specialist lawyer in to give training. So again, if we identify something we can do in Indonesia and Jakarta think they can take the work on, maybe we're able to invite other local firms to attend the training and share that with them. The overseas work is something we do. We've been doing that with Babsicle and a couple of other organizations, and that is very much focused on where we have skills that we can actually share that are of value elsewhere. So with Babsicle, it's been around legal ethics. If you have a country where legal ethics hasn't been taught for many, many decades because of the situation in the country, maybe the lawyers there need to have some additional support from lawyers in other countries about how they deal with legal ethics issues in country. So we can partner with Babsicle, we can go and deliver those sorts of workshops where we share skills which the lawyers can then use to share onwards. And when we do that work, I think for us it's very important. We don't see that as something we should do on a pro bono basis forever. We should be giving pro bono training to the lawyers in the country so that they actually gain the skills and they don't need us to come in and do that sort of training. So I think that's a short-term pro bono activity for us, even where it's needed. The other thing I should mention, and it's something I think we can all as firms maybe try and do more, where we're aware of external bodies that can provide training to try and share that information with local firms. So obviously Babsicle provides training. There's an initiative in the UK right now. You mentioned the ABA for training. There's a rule of law initiative in the UK called Roll UK. At the moment, they have 27 jurisdictions, sadly not Southeast Asia, but Nepal is on the list. I know somebody is here from there. And they are actually, the initiative is government funded to provide training. So you can go as a bar association, as a local legal organisation, you can go directly to Roll UK and through them access all of the academics in the UK. You can access judges, you can access lawyers. If there are particular skills needed, that can be fully funded and brought out. So I think it would be good for firms to try and think more about when we know that's available, can we share that with local firms so they can pressure their local bar associations to arrange for that sort of training.
Okay. Algif, where does training fit in your organization?
we have many types of training. First, Indonesian fellow is here. Maybe know about Kalabahu, Karya Latihan Bantuan Hukum, or legal aid training. We've been doing this training for 37 years every year. There are 50 participants, student or bachelor of law from 200 applicants. And then we also have legal aid training for labor union every year. And then we have many trainings, for some specific training for paralegal, disability rights paralegal, minority rights paralegal, or juvenile paralegal. And we also give training to our partner in Southern Thailand. We have like sisterhood or brotherhood organization, Muslim Attorney Center. So we have training every month, every 3 months in Southern Thailand, Patani, and also we have regional training for public interest lawyers in Southeast Asia. We have around 100 alumni of regional human rights mechanism training, supported by American Bar Association, Rule of Law Initiative, and USID before. And then we are about to do some trainings to lawyers that want to be pro bono lawyers, and also journalists. And then, we have many types of training, and we're more focused on legal empowerment or training for justice seekers or grassroots training, but we also concerned with capacity building for public interest lawyers, but also we're concerned about journalists and also profit lawyers that want to be pro bono lawyers.
Can I ask who does the training? Is it LBH itself that does the training? Do you do the training? Do you bring in local lawyers to do the training? University professors, foreign firms?
Yeah, mix. Sometimes we do our own training, and sometimes we invite many academics or experts. Sometimes we ask our client or our paralegals to give some speech or training or one or two sessions in the paralegal training as well. And then, like I said before, we also invite professor from outside of Indonesia and also from American Bar Association.
Nanny, how does your organization utilize training, and where do you get the training from?
When we started our legal empowerment program, we got training from our colleague in legal aid organization. Then from their process, we translate what they train us into more simple module to train the paralegal at the grassroots level. So I think if I would like to contribute on what kind of training should be given to lawyer, for example, I think on the issues of social justice issues in general, as well as some of the legal framework. For example, in the case of women's rights issues, we have a lot of international instrument that has been ratified here, but not really enforced, and some lawyers do not use this to defend the women's clients, for example. So, and I think this kind of training are also needed. And communication, how to communicate all this difficult terminology in law to more simple and easy to be understood by the grassroots. I think that's one things that we really always struggle to use the legal framework in our training to grassroots, especially in building their awareness that it is important, it is necessary to use legal framework for any case that they face in their life.
Okay, and Gianna, for NGO, you arrange a lot of training, you organize a lot of training, and this is one of the key things that you do to bridge the gap. Why don't you tell us about some of the training activities that your NGO undertakes?
Actually, trainings are one of our main business scope. We do many trainings per year, and our trainings including like 4 types. The first type is we train experienced lawyers in the projects. Instead of just provide the plain training to them, we would rather do the training during the course of project. So when we recruit lawyer volunteers in a project, we will, as a first step, we will train them with the relevant knowledges. So this is the first point. So this mainly from a skill perspective. For the second one is about law school students and the 1 year below 1 year PQE law school young lawyers. So for those group, we will train not only skills but also ideas. We have used legal camp, and we have specific trainings provided for them on not-for-profit law, and we also chase the very recent trend of not-for-profit law. For example, the recent charity law and the recent foreign NGO law adopted in China. So this is the second part. So a bit different from as organizations, we also do trainings to as NGOs. So this is the third point. We try to teach them how to use lawyers and what their legal demands are. So for example, there are legal demands, but sometimes they cannot realize themselves until there are litigations or they are sued by others. So we try to teach them there are legal demands and how to use lawyers, and our lawyers are in the good place to help you. So the fourth training is the one that we are going to develop shortly, is the trainings provided to large foreign law firms, because they have sufficient lawyer resources and they have great pro bono cultures, and that they keen to learn pro bono law related knowledges in China, for example, the charity law, the new foreign NGO law. So this is a fourth point we plan to develop in the coming year.
I know I said we were going to talk about this issue of pro bono, or lawyers are too expensive when they're providing pro bono services, and how that relates. But I just want to park that for a moment, because we're getting near the end of our time, and I wanted to see if there's any questions that the audience has before we would go to cover some more topics. No questions. Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes, there's a question.
Maybe this is a question for Gian. Could you maybe just give another example, or tell us more about it? In your experience, what type of training you see is requested over and over again? Are there any trends?
Trainings for what?
Types of specific training that are requested from either on the NGO side or from lawyers?
As you know, I want to start my answer from an example. In 2013, we had a project about law manual for NGO, which is supported by Canadian National Fund. So we are very ambitious, and we recruited about 20 lawyers to write that book. This book is tailored for NGOs, so we are trying to cover all legal issues that those NGOs will face from their daily operation. But the thing is, when we received the works from those local lawyers, we found they are totally irrelevant. So they try to consider from a commercial way, or from a very, very irrelevant way, because they have never have a NGO as their client, so they can't understand what NGO's legal requests are. Take an example, folks, the labor law issue. So in companies, we will see it is very simple. There are employers and employees. But in NGOs, it is very complex because they have volunteers, they have trainees, they have intern, they have part-time work, they have some senior workers who retired from their previous job, and they want to do something meaningful for the NGOs, and other than the formal full-time employees. So because of this special situation, the commercial lawyers sometimes find it is very difficult to understand the operation of those NGOs. And this is an example. So finally, we trained 2 interns to rewrite every works they prepared, so they could fit for the legal demands of our NGOs. So this is one side for the lawyers, but for the NGOs, as I said, as an NGO client of NGO, they have 25 employees, but 22 of them are actually left the NGO through arbitration. So it is very terrible. So when the problem occurs, the NGO finally realized that there is legal risks of them. So what we are trying to do is we are not going to tell you legal risks, but we are trying to help you to realize there are legal risks, and you do have legal demands, although you do not realize at the current stage.
Any other questions? Maybe just a minute or so from each panelist who wants to give any concluding remarks on bridging the gaps and dealing with the challenges. We'll start with Nanny.
Yeah, I think now there is a trend, especially for the community at the grassroots level, the awareness, the importance of getting assistance from lawyers for their legal protection. So, however, we have the demand is increased, the trend of demand increased, but I think the service provider for that is not so available at the grassroots. So maybe there should be very strategic way how then this pro bono culture can be really increased, built in our community, especially in Indonesia.
Thank you. Gianna?
In Asia, in China, I see the biggest issue is the demand far exceeds the supply. So what we are going to do is we are going to encourage more large foreign law firms to get themselves involved in providing pro bono services to NGOs instead of to vulnerable persons. Other than provide pro bono services to vulnerable persons, or NGOs providing services to vulnerable persons. But we should think more about the legal demands of NGOs themselves. And for the local NGOs, I will try to encourage more young lawyers who could, bring the culture of pro bono into their law firm, and try to see how they could influence the management team of their law firm. So this is really at the very initial stage, but we will see things happen.
I'm going to sound like a mobile phone company for a minute and say, from a law firm perspective, it's good to talk. We really benefit from meeting local firms. We benefit from talking with other global firms that we're normally competitors with, but in pro bono, we're all partners. We benefit from talking to all of the NGOs to understand what the needs are, and I think the more people can do what we're doing here and talk about what the gaps are that need to be bridged, the more likely somebody says, I've had to deal with that, here's an idea. So just please, I'd like to encourage everyone to keep conversations going. There are local pro bono roundtables in many countries. If you're an NGO, try to find out about them. If you're a law firm, please join them.
Yeah. I think now is the era of collaboration. We cannot do everything with by ourselves anymore. And then there are four stakeholders, main stakeholders that should be connected to fill the gap on access to justice. First is Faculty of Law or Legal Education, and also their alumni. Then second is legal aid organizations. Third is Bar Association. And fourth is the communities or NGO or organization that work in the grassroots. Yesterday we had a meeting with Justika.com. Justika.com was established by Hukum Online, and they have a very good application or web to provide information about pro bono lawyers, and then there is a menu to fill the chronology or case position, and then they will connect between pro bono lawyers and justice seekers. And then we agreed to collaborate with Justika.com to not only to refer the case but also to strengthen another part of pro bono. And 2 weeks ago we had a meeting with some friends from Indonesian Bar Association, and yeah, it's the era of collaboration. We cannot do it by our own self.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank our panelists for sharing their experiences and their challenges and their insights, and please show your appreciation as well.